It's been less than 2 years since making its grand introduction, but now it's safe to say that consumer-generated AI is ubiquitous. The advent of large language models has fundamentally changed the way that most of us access technology and the internet. To discover something new, solve a problem, or find a product, ask a device in a natural language, and get a result. But for marketers, this means that these models are recommending products and services, which can lead to a loss of control. How can brands ensure their products and services are in front of the right people at the right place and the right time? This leaves us with the question, can the marriage of AI-powered CRM and media data turbo-transform personalization and at the same time let brands regain control? The monetization model for AI providers isn't exactly clear, as we find ourselves with access to advanced technology while still in the early days of testing and learning. My name is Amanda Grant, Global Head of Partnerships at Choreograph, the Group M Data and Technology arm. With me today are some of the leading voices on this topic. From one of the largest CRM agencies in the world, Chandra Mostov, of VML and formerly Wonderman. We have Marc Mathieu, AI Transformation Lead at Salesforce. Marc is no stranger to this area, coming from Samsung as their CMO and also alumni at Unilever and Coca-Cola. And we have, last but not least, Jackie Cutrone, CMO from NewtonX, a B2B market research company that has advised brands like the Wall Street Journal and Google. Welcome. I'm going to start with you, Chandra.
Yeah.
So your business is at the forefront of marketing and personalization technology. When it comes to data-driven marketing, how are you future-proofing customers and advising CMOs to turn these challenges into opportunities?
Well, that's a big question. There's lots to approach there, and I think that to some extent a lot have changed in the last year, and then to another perspective, everything is the same, right? It all comes down to making sure that you have the right tech, you have the right data, and you have let's say, something to say, and that you have people and processes to tie it all together. And I still think that the biggest friction points is around people and processes, right? How do you actually use these technologies and these opportunities in the right way? And how do you prioritize what are the first steps and the second steps and the third steps, right? And I think if we look, like there's been a lot of focus on Gen AI, but we should not forget that AI is much more than just Gen AI. It is also about predictions, evaluating the work, knowing what works and what doesn't work. It influences how we work and the work we actually deliver, the experiences we do. And obviously, many more points than that. And I think that the really interesting part when we look at sort of the intersections between CRM and paid is that there are opportunities to figure out how we can take the slow-moving data from CRM that looks over time and draws perspective on how you as a consumer act and your preferences, and link that to your media buy in smart new ways, like Choreograph is doing, or figuring out how you can actually find patterns in the data and link that without actually sharing the data. And then vice versa, there is now new opportunities to link the signals we get in the media space, where we have much more fast-moving data, where we see the consumers much more frequently, and we can take that data and fuel that back into the ecosystem of CRM, and thereby actually get a good synergy of both having CRM data fuel the paid experiences, but getting signals back from the paid to actually make the owned experiences more relevant. And I think that is something that, if it's done right, will truly benefit brands and the consumers, but it obviously needs to be done in a respectful way of not, let's say, becoming creepy or intimidating, and it always needs to be consented and not happening behind the backs of the consumers. So yeah, and then from personalization, one of the challenges we've had for years is to feed what I call the personalization beast, the content beast, right? Of having enough to say, where we've had great partners like Salesforce delivering fantastic opportunities to personalize, right? But for many years, it's been like we didn't really have a content supply chain that would deliver those personalized experiences without having too high cost, and finding ways where we can drive the cost down by using Gen AI, but also overlaying that with predictions on how that is going to perform, gives us very new ways to actually realize that hyper-personalization vision that we were sort of, like just a year, we were struggling a lot on the content side.
Yeah, and talking about like what controls and helps feed and advance that is the technology piece. So Marc, I wanted to pivot to you. And as mentioned in the introduction, Salesforce is one of the largest sources of first-party data in the market. What challenges do you see companies facing when it comes to integrating AI-powered CRM systems? And with media campaigns, are there new trends that you're seeing, or is it a little bit of the old is the new?
Well, I mean, I liked what you said when you said, you know, on one hand, everything is the same, on the other hand, everything is different. I think for the short term, the risk is that everything is going to be the same because, habits die hard. And people tend to do the same thing using new technology, but still very much doing the same thing. So we're going to go and personalize more. We're going to target more. We're going to predict more. We're going to, analyze more. The real question for me is how is it going to game change, in 3, 5, 10 years, how brands and customers relate. And I kind of disagree with your opening statement where you said, do all of this and at the same time, enable brands to regain control. I think the idea that brands control their customers is, first of all, an idea I've never really believed in. But at the same time, it's an idea that with the development of data and AI and personalization, true personalization, being personal, the ability to be truly personal to people's, not just, product needs, brand needs, but also almost like what do they really need in their life? How do they need to be served? Is something that's going to drastically change. And I think that users, people, I've always hated calling them consumers, but are going to once and for all regain control or gain control. And I've been personally fascinated by this idea that brands are going to have to become fluid. Every brand is going to be designed around me, as opposed to the brands are going to design the brands and then every customer is going to buy them, consume them. No, I think that we're going to get used, because of generative AI, we're going to get used to having everything customized to us and to our individual needs. Content, but tomorrow also services, experiences, products, and brands.
Yeah, you're going to hate that I'm saying consumer, but I wanted to ask Jackie for her perspective in the consumer space.
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing a lot of interesting trends at the intersection of data unification and people experience, right? Customer experience. We've seen it with 3 studies in the last year, Teradata, Google, and Essence Mediacom. And from the perspective of NewtonX, we're a B2B research company. So we have the perspective of business leaders and marketing and business professionals from within the organization. And there are 2 key things on business leaders' minds when it comes to data unification and customer experiences, and that's data and their customers. And they're thinking AI is a way that they're going to connect it. In a recent study we ran with Teradata on the perception of C-suite executives' trust in AI, the top 2 successful implementation areas were enhancing customer experiences through personalized interactions, and 2, improving customer support. And I think that's both something that each of you have touched on, and Google too, right? We saw in a survey of AI and how U.S. retail decision makers were using AI, and a key area to deploy AI in 2024 is customer service automation, with 59% of retailers wanting to streamline customer service operations and enhance customer interactions. And then finally, we saw it with Essence Mediacom when they ran their global B2B CMO study, that 80% of CMOs acknowledge that the increasing importance of customer centricity over the past 2 to 3 years. So, and data unification is how they're going to achieve that.
I think your point about service is key, because I've seen it at Salesforce. It was probably our business case 0 was actually around customer service powered by AI. And it's a very easy way, I think, to venture into AI, because it's a contained team, contained department that you can easily train, monitor. And what's interesting is that as you see, when we started to work, actually, one of our early customers was Gucci, and they asked us to Guccify, through generative AI, the service replies. But what was fascinating is the fact that we actually saw the way it didn't just create a product, a new usage of customer service. It augmented the team. It augmented all the service agents to another level of professionalism, turning them into brand ambassadors, into salespeople, because suddenly the AI took away all the pain, basically, of finding the answers and all the information, etc. And it freed them up to actually have not anymore a catalog conversation, but a collection conversation. And therefore, they were able to actually have something much more interesting with the customer conversation that enabled them to really talk about the brand, and as a result, potentially, increase the conversion rate, because suddenly, they were saying, oh, that belt that you bought, that you're calling for, or chatting for, actually would go very well with these other pieces of outfit. And suddenly you have and I say the service center is not only a great place to start with the service area, but a great place to start how you will transform your organization, because AI is going to have so many impacts in terms of transforming our workforce.
Yeah.
It's a good example too of elevating like careers and employees versus the fears around AI and job security.
Totally.
It's a really good example of enhancing that offering.
I think you're pointing to a channel like, of course, customer service, where typically I have people in front of people if it's not some automated response, which most people don't like. That's also a more expensive channel, of course, and where we often are let's say in a marketing context, where we're using mediated channels, where we have automations and other things, because we don't have the luxury of having people in front of people all the time. And to your point on that, this is not just, it's marketing, it's customer service, it's the product, it's every touch point to the consumer. Is that ultimately when we take all the buzzwords away and we take all the technology and all the things away, I think that we're trying to build a relationship between a brand and, exactly as you're saying, a human being, right? So I think about it as the ideal state is to think about it as, we can talk about hyper-personalization, but really it's about humanizing the experience. It's about doing what we do as people every day, where I can recognize you, I can remember you, I can respect, I can listen, I can learn when to shut up and when to talk. And I can continue a conversation where I left off, no matter if I'm switching from one touch point to another. And that is where I think that some of the new data-driven opportunities allows us to build a much stronger data sensory system and grow let's say, a stronger brain, so we can become truly customer-centric or people or human-centric in the way that we actually see you and respect you and treat you as an individual, and therefore deliver better experiences and better services and better products ultimately, and therefore also, let's say, marketing around the brand.
I fully agree, and there will be so much change and progress in the quantity and the quality of the data that you're going to be able to inject to really make that relationship so much more relevant, so much more powerful, so much more human. Because everything that can be automated will be. And therefore you'll really be able to focus on the same way that when you are with friends or family, or you don't focus on the process, you focus on the people, on the conversation. And I think that's the future.
But the risk is that there is so much hype right now that everybody just jumps on the next new thing without actually remembering that ultimately it is about that relationship. It's about actually saying again, how do you take that personal relationship between human beings and scale that through technology and data? How do you actually make that possible, and how do you make your customer service better by linking clicks on your website and making your paid media better by linking the traits you have in your CRM to your paid, and vice versa, right?
Before we move on from, I think, the consumer point, I just wanted to touch on with you, Jackie, one more time. Are you seeing any consumer shifts in sentiment around this? And staying in that same place with the consumer in mind, are we also creating these echo chambers of self-inflicted thought when there's not a lot of exposure to external thoughts and pieces, as kind of like a combined challenge in the space?
Yes, I'm smiling because it's the customer is really of two minds on this. On one hand, they expect relevancy. I think both of you you touched on that. They know we have some of their data, right? They expect a relevant, engaging experience. From work that we have done in the past with Wall Street Journal on how AI is going to impact brand marketers, 78% of marketers picked greater efficiency, while 63% said they think AI is going to help them produce new kinds of content. So it's this very exciting world where, you know, agencies and creatives have all this access to information to create these highly engaging experiences with people, with customers. However, on the other hand, there are risks, right? So also from the AI in trust study that we did with Teradata, the number one concern, I'm gonna do that again. Also from the AI trust study that we did with Teradata, the number one concern from marketers is safeguarding customer relationships and the company's reputation from potential harm, right? So customer data breaches and reputational damage are about 40% each, are the aspects most at risk from irreparable damage. And finally, leadership, right? They're apprehensive about AI's consequences rather than the capabilities. Data privacy violations is 50%. 50% of people have that top of mind amongst leadership. So it's a really interesting line where we have to create relevant and engaging experiences because that's expected. However, you can go too far and alienate a customer, right? And then we're finding that line real time, right? And that's just sort of how we're going to market. So it's a very careful, you know, proceed with caution kind of space.
But again, if you think about human relationships, right? We master that every day. I would say even kids do it better than the most sophisticated brands in the world. We know how to say hi, hello, dear, give a hug, give a hand, right? A relationship is not binary, right? So I think what you're seeing in the data is that, yes, I want a personalized relationship when we know each other, right? When there is value, when there is a relationship, right? But if the relationship is just a transaction or an email permission or something, we don't really have a relationship, right? So as a brand, you need to earn that relationship. And then if there is value in that, just like between friends, right? I will share life stories. I will explain what my passions are. And we can share that over time. That builds up something that is much stronger than just we met for the first time, right? And I think that is one of the challenges that we again forget when we are looking at data, that we just think, now we have the data, we have the right to use it, right? I could go to a dinner party, I could have researched something about the people there. I found a lot of information online on them that was available, and it could have been very creepy that I was showing up and showing them pictures and talked about their last vacation, right? We as human beings know that that would be going over the line of creepiness, right? And as brands, I think if we think about, again, what are the rules of human engagement and how do we treat people, and think about that, how we do that again through that lens when we look about data, we'll have a lot of the answers, right? It is not different than it was last year or 100 years ago or 500 years ago of how people build relationships. And we just have to stop thinking in averages and see people and look through the data and the transactions through the lens of what is the strength of our relationship and what should we use the data for and when is it valuable.
On the theme of making sure you're using the right data, Marc, I wanted to ask you, what do you think, within CRM is the most effective way to be using data in this space right now?
Well, I mean, the first thing which we see, and I'm glad you're asking the question because we often jump into AI, generative AI, etc., and data is where it all starts.
Yeah.
I mean, unless you focus quality time and effort and investments in the data space, understanding how all your data is currently trapped, and are you going to create a roadmap for untrapping the data, therefore the value that lies into all that data. I'm amazed by how we build silos because that's how organizations work. So, departments build silos, successive leaders build silos. So everybody, all that data is in pockets and is most of the time not connected. So the number one challenge is really to understand what is all the data that you have available across all your systems. And clearly at Salesforce, one of the big shifts we did was when we actually moved with Data Cloud to really integrate all the data, whether it sits in the CRM or in other data warehouses or in other data lakes, because it's critical that you say, what am I going to need to be, to your point, as smart as a human being in taking all of that data and making human sense, common sense of it, in order to actually serve people in a way that is not creepy, that is, taking into account people's needs, but also emotions, and builds that long-term relationship. And that's why I do think that AI is going to transcend, marketing or CRM, is because the reality, the persistence of data, of information, and the ability, therefore, to know someone over time, if we have the patience not to focus on the short term, but to focus on how do you build a relationship for the long run. When you build a relationship with a friend, the first thing you do is you don't say, hey, do you have 2 tickets for a concert tonight? No. Even if you know that person is in the music business, you're going to build that relationship. Otherwise, she'll get the tickets, but not me
Someone
who
else is gonna get the
didn't know
conversion.
you. So the reality, you have the patience of building that relationship and that narrative over time. And I think, again, this idea that understanding that it's not our data, it's people's data, it's not our brand, it's people's brands, and how do we actually, in a way, more than ever, become a servant, mentality, as opposed to a selling mentality.
Excellent. We're definitely running close on time here, so I want to ask a quick question and get a quick answer from the panel here. We're at Cannes, we're surrounded by marketers and advertising from around the world. Everyone's talking about an AI. What is a practical use case that, from your different perspectives, everyone should be taking advantage of today? We'll start with you, Chandra.
I think I'll do 2. I'll do it very short. One is, of course, being able to generate more content that's relevant and taking departure in the relationship you have, right? That is super incredibly powerful. Obviously, it needs to be done in the right way, and it needs to be tested, and that's the other part of it, right? Actually measuring sort of both the performance, but also the prediction of what content will actually resonate with which audiences. And I think that's more classical AI than it's Gen AI, and I think it's being overshadowed a bit now, but I think we will see that a lot of other parts of AI will step to the forefront also over the next year.
Jackie?
I want to take an approach of actually thinking about a practical use case of AI from within the organization. We're often very quick to recommend external applications of it, but I believe leaders, business leaders, engineers, people who are training these LLM models need to hold themselves to a really high standard of quality for their data, because if you don't, this echo chamber that you mentioned earlier is going to be like a melting pot of mixed quality data, and you're not going to know what to trust. So I would like to see business leaders spend more time kind of internally making sure it's really good and high quality. As they go to market, is only going to increase their success.
Great. Marc?
And if I may, given I'm last, I'm going to answer slightly different. So instead of giving a practical use case, let me give maybe a practical tip. I think one of the challenges we all are having in AI, and we talked about some of it, is that you need to walk and chew gum at the same time. So you need to quickly implement AI, and currently the status of AI is mostly around efficiency and productivity, etc. But at the same time, you need to start to think about what will marketing, what will branding look like when AI really is here to augment people, to potentially replace some of the work and augment your employees. What are the implications of that in terms of work, in terms of roles, in terms of organizations, and how do you prepare for that? And then eventually, more mid to long term, once we really go to autonomous AI and AI agents and AI assistants, then how is it going to fundamentally transform our business models? How is it going to transform our brands? Because there will be brands, there will be businesses that will be AI born, and that will compete with legacy brands, legacy organizations. And I still think that Cannes is very much living still in this legacy world. And I think that it's important that everybody here keeps in mind the fact that change is going to happen at a degree that is not probably reflected on the Croisette this year.
And that's a wrap. I want to thank the panelists so much today for their time. This has been a really rich conversation around AI, and signing off from the Cannes Lion Festival.